instead of trying to control life, instead of trying to hold on to every little detail you possibly can to make sure that you're in control. Okay, surrender is the opposite of that. It's trusting there is a natural flow of life for you if you just let go and allow it. Hello there. Surrender. I want to share my journey with surrender because this has been something that's changed my entire life. And I think this is a key word right now. We realize now that there is no other way except surrender. So let's talk about that. Firstly, surrender for me was the hardest thing because I was brought up with a tight grip on control. Surrender means letting go, doesn't it? But I had it in my mind that I had to control everything or something bad would happen. And the reason bad things happened was because I wasn't in control. But you see, the very common misconception is that this control is being held by a higher self, but it's not. Control is our mind and our body, or our programming, or our ego, thinking that it should take the reins and that it knows best. So I started off very much programmed into this ego-based control way of being. And we've all had experiences with that because our culture is based in control. And so we learned from our parents and from society that we had to be in control too, otherwise bad things happen. And so our career, our family, our foundation even has to be well planned and controlled by us in every single moment. And that creates a lot of survival stress, of fight, flight, freeze consistently. And that's why most of us still today are living in survival mode, fight, flight, freeze, control. And so for me, when I first discovered Neuro Linguistic Programming, keyword programming, I suddenly found a whole world I hadn't seen before, which many of us are not aware of, which is that we operate through a filter of programs, individual programs based on our own personal experience, values, beliefs, memories, and experiences. And so depending on how you were brought up and the core wounds that you had to experience, you would have created a whole set of filters of perception. And so when I learned about neuro-linguistic programming, I suddenly found that all of these filters of perception were operating, were covertly operating my thoughts, words, and deeds in very much a disempowering way. And the National Science Foundation did research and found that 80% of the average person's thoughts are negative in nature, because indeed they are our programming, our filters of perception. And so we try in vain to change our thoughts, words, and deeds to be better people. But if we don't actually go into our subconscious, into the programming, we often find ourselves struggling without being able to really create lasting change in our lives. So this was an important part of my journey towards surrender, was first realizing that I had a whole lot of covert programming operating in every moment. And I realized that, there was something beyond the programming, and this was key for me. And this helped me open up my perception into a more holistic or spiritual point of view as to who I really was. And if we can reprogram our entire mind, and neuroscience has shown we have a neuroplastic brain, then who are we really? Who are we underneath all of that programming? This was a question I posed to my NLP trainer, and he gave me a beautiful answer. He said, we are love underneath all of that programming. Now, of course, that opens a whole new can of worms if you're not someone who's already at that conscious level of awareness around what love is. So I won't go into what love is, but it certainly started my own path towards seeking something more beyond the self-development industry, beyond just changing my programming. I wanted to know who I really was. And this is the one key factor in surrender. We have to know who we really are to really understand the mechanism of surrender. So I happily realized that all of this life that I'd spent up to my 20s in trying to change who I was from the outside in, and then realizing I could change my wiring, was still a lot of mind-based living for me. I was still in the mind. And I realized that all this philosophizing that I was doing in my life, because I did a lot of that, I read a lot of books, I was extremely curious about who we are and why we're here. It really still doesn't necessarily lead to a direct experience of who we are, of who I am. We can talk about it until we are red in the face, but it might just be more talk, more mind. Talk comes from the mind. So I moved into a new space in my quest to find out who I was. I found the heart. And I didn't realize that the heart operates at a different level than the mind. And often, most of us still are living separately from our heart. We've put a nice wall up around our heart because of our core wounds, and we live in the mind. And a lot of the self-development industry is about the mind still, and that they don't teach about the heart and opening the heart. And so I found this heart opening information through Greg Braden. He was one of the key figures for me. And the science behind that very much interested me, and how we have an electromagnetic field around the heart. So Joe Dispenza's work as well, and an electromagnetic field around the brain, and they both can become coherent or in union together. They can start to beat at the same drum beat. They can start to work together rather than being separate or closed off from each other. And I've talked about this many times, but heart coherence brings us into flow. So this was the beginning of me starting to see what surrender really meant. Was first realizing my programming, secondly realizing that I hadn't been operating from my heart space. It wasn't even a thing that we were educated in. And I had to find that out on my own. And then that moved me into shadow work. Shadow work is a very important piece of the puzzle. Shadow work is recognizing, yes, you've had covert programming or your ego running the show your whole life. And yes, those shadow programs are operating in the dark because you haven't seen them. So how do we bring them out into the light so they don't hold the same power? Shadow work. Shadow work is not trying to change ourselves, which is really just our programming, trying to change our programming, but it's acceptance. It's seeing the shadows and lovingly accepting and releasing them. We can't release our shadows until we see and accept them first. And we don't do that by trying to change them, fix them, block them, or distract ourselves from the process. So for me, shadow work was actually being okay with expressing all this stuck energy within my body and releasing it through different emotions or energy in motion, allowing it to be released through conscious process of seeing it, accepting it, validating it, acknowledging those emotions and releasing them. And so shadow work formed my next step towards finding what surrender really meant. Yoga was another part of my journey. I had never been in my body really. I'd been up in the head my whole life. I'd been in my head. And so when I discovered yoga, it opened up a whole new level of awareness of my body, and all of that emotion trapped in my body became more integrated. I started to be more perceptive of sensations in my body that were trapped emotions, that were covertly guiding my thoughts, words, and deeds in the same way that programming does. It's all connected. And so yoga helped me to move into my body. And then I moved over to Kriya Yoga, and I became more aware of that central channel of clearing those energy centers within our body, the energy body, the emotional body. The energy body, though, is where we are able to access flow, and that's healing the nervous system. So when we can become more aware of our body through yoga and through postures and through breathing, we can then start to be aware of that energy flow. We start to tap in and have our senses more attuned to those chakra systems, to the chakra system within. You don't have to use the word chakra if you don't want to, but it is energy centers within our human body that can be measured. The next step for me was bioenergetics, Dr. Sue Morta's work. She helped me see that just simply by using my conscious awareness, the focus of my attention in my breathing down my energy centers, would I create new circuitry? Would I be building new circuitry to create more openness and energy flow, to access more parts of me that had been stuck in the shadows, that I've been blinded to? So bioenergetics was another important piece of the puzzle for me towards finding surrender. So what is surrender, though? After all of this, in my journey, what I found is surrender is recognizing that you are not the mind and you are not the body. So all of this work that led me up to this point was seeing the importance of the mind and the importance of the body and how it had been controlling my reality, but recognizing finally that I'm indeed not any of these things. And so I'm allowing awareness, the awareness that I'm not my body or the mind, the awareness that I'm in fact pure consciousness, having a human experience, to take front and center. This awareness needs to take front and center. If you like, awareness has many names. I like awareness because it's very straightforward, but you might also call it pure spirit, pure consciousness, the essence of who you really are, the I am presence. So recognizing that surrender is actually allowing the mind to step back and become a servant to the I am presence, the spirit that can then occupy that cleared out channel, because you've been breathing and using conscious awareness to clear energy within your body, using shadow work, clearing that central channel, allowing it to be open to flow, to love, to receive inspiration or spirit. We are the receivers, the antenna for spirit. So that, to me, is what surrender started to become in my awareness. We are not the monkey mind. We're not its programs. All these thoughts and preferences, all of our preferences, our likes and our dislikes, our judgments and our criticisms, our blaming and our correcting, our opinions and our planning and our strategizing and all of this is the mind. This is the mind, not pure awareness. This is the mind within the body. So surrender is moving back into a higher level of awareness or separation, if you like, from the mind, from that small self, from the programming, from the ego. And the ego is really just our wounds with a whole lot of entities attached to it that feed off of those wounded energies, those lower energies. So surrender is coming back to the higher self, the I am presence, and recognizing the difference, that you are not the mind and all of that stuff that creates havoc in your human life because of thoughts. So how do I surrender? Well, for me, this has been a journey of learning what works for me, and it's still a journey. I'm still learning. But breathing has to be one of the first things I do. It's become unconscious. It's become a habit, a good habit. But what I find is breathing takes me out of the mind fast, quickly. Breathing allows me to step back from the character of Melise, the ego, the personality, and all those thoughts, and come back into the body a little bit more. Breathing is moving out of the fight, flight, freeze, or survival part of our brain, moving into the more logical, calm part of our brain. Breathing, if we aren't aware of our breathing, we can be breathing quite shallow, and shallow breathing brings shallow thoughts or survival. But deep breathing in the belly brings deep thoughts, deep logical thoughts. So I like to think of breathing as the first point of contact with surrender. I love the metaphor of taking off the virtual reality headset of the simulation we're in, the matrix, if you like, and remembering who we really are, pure awareness, or the I am presence, pure spirit, pure bliss. Cannot be anything other than pure bliss when you are who you really are, when you know, when you experience. And so taking off that headset, taking that big deep breath and stepping back from identifying as the programming, the ego. And this brings you into a beautiful place of spaciousness, of quiet from the monkey mind. It doesn't mean the mind doesn't stop, but you are stepped out of identifying with the mind. And that's the spaciousness I'm talking about. It's recognizing that all of those dreams and goals and desires and attachments, even intentions, are all in the mind. And when you really step out of that, out of time and space, taking off the headset, you'll find that you are none of those things. You are quiet stillness. You are pure loving awareness. So what is really happening when we surrender? That was a big question I've had for a long time, but I can only go by my experience. So that's what I'm going to share here. What is happening when we surrender? Well, from what I believe, from the journey I've been on, is the heart opens. We move down to the receiver, the antenna for spirit. We receive inspiration. Our spirit guides us each step, in each moment, in a loving space of present awareness. The ego, the mind, has to move to the side. And what is the ego? As I mentioned, it's just our wounding. When we step away from all of that, we become aware of flow again. This is our natural state when we surrender. Flow. And I can promise you, flow will present to you ease and grace in your life. From personal experience, the more you let go, the more ease and grace will come into your life. Life becomes flow and opportunities reveal themselves. Miracles happen. Things you didn't see coming, but are pleasantly surprised by. Opportunities to learn, expand, grow, and transform into higher levels of consciousness, because that's what the soul really wants. And how this looks in your life, from my experience, is it's very simple. It's not complicated. I take time out to breathe consciously throughout my day, especially when I wake up, especially before I go to sleep. I constantly remind myself that I'm not the mind and all the body. And this brings me back to who I am, that awareness and that bliss that comes with that. This is beautiful awareness. and letting go and trusting the process of life instead of trying to control life. Instead of trying to hold on to every little detail you possibly can to make sure that you're in control. Okay, surrender is the opposite of that. It's trusting there is a natural flow of life for you if you just let go and allow it. It's hard for us to do that because we've been taught the opposite, so we never get to experiment and try it out. I would encourage you to experiment with this. The other part of what I found in surrender is self-acceptance. You begin to accept that you have a mind that might have 1,000 thoughts a second. You have a body. You are aware of the programming from your core wounds and the energies that like to feed off that in your life. But all of these influences, impulses from the mind become less intrusive, take a back seat, are more servant to the heart. Self-acceptance is doing that shadow work every day that it comes up. It's not identifying with that wound as you, but releasing it with love. For me, signs of surrender when they really work in my life, and this is getting better because I'm really starting to get into a flow with surrender, and I've experimented long enough to see I can trust this. I can trust this. It's okay. It works. So signs that I've found are that I'm overall a much calmer person. There's more ease and flow in my life, absolutely. I'm more in that alpha brainwave state more often, which is the natural state of a child, joy and relaxed. I'm not attached to outcomes like I used to be because I don't identify with the mind and the body so much anymore, the Melise, the personality that I was born with, that I created. I don't identify with that so much. So I don't identify with the attachments that this personality wants to create in this life. So it's easier for me to let go. So it's a knock-on effect. I have more love and appreciation for others. So I think this is because my heart's open more, because I live more down here rather than up here. So I see others through this filter, through the heart. I have a lot more self-love and acceptance. How can I not love who I am when I know who I am beyond the programming? I've noticed that I attract people of similar resonance into my life who are also at this level of surrender. That's really nice. I'm finding that that flow in my life creates perfect timings for things that I would never have foreseen. Beautiful serendipitous experiences consistently. Of course, I'm seeing synchronicities in my life every day, little signs here and there. They haven't stopped. I know for a fact because for a period there in my life, I didn't see these things, but now I do. I'm experiencing a lot more inner peace. I think that's the biggest thing with surrender for me. And I think for many, this is the reason people seek to find surrender, is for the peace, the unshakable inner peace, the realization you are not your body or the mind. You can let that go in any moment. I'm also noticing a lot more joy and delight in this life experience, despite some of the energies around us, the chaos, the flux of our current world. There's waves of peace that I experience which get stronger. I'm experiencing them more quickly the moment I just step out, close my eyes, take a deep breath. I would highly recommend you read a book called The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer. That's a beautiful book about this. I would experiment with letting go, try out some of these things, see it, how it works for a day, a week. Promise you won't regret it. Ask for help if you're struggling to let go. Ask for help. Pray. Ask your guides or a higher power or that force beyond yourself that you trust. Just ask, because that's putting your clear intention for what you want to create in this experience. And it is a noble quest from the heart. So you can be sure that that answer will come to you, because it doesn't come from the head. Move into gratitude. If you're struggling to move into your heart, move into gratitude. Gratitude opens the heart quickly. Look at the things in your life that have been beautiful, that have supported you. Spend time in that energy and you'll attract more of that. I know the first time I discovered my heart, like really discovered my heart, after some Greg Braden teachings. I fell in love with my heart. It was the most amazing experience. I would put my hands on my heart and I would feel that relationship, that love that I had. And that just kept growing. And I had this one experience when I was in a car driving. I was the driver. And some music came on that really touched my heart, because music can do that. Music can generate a resonance that is in unison with your heart and activate energies within you you weren't ready for. And this is what happened to me. I was listening to this beautiful music while I was driving, and then I felt this shooting energy come up from my core, my root chakra, just shooting energy come right up. My whole body felt like I was in some sort of ecstasy, but like a whoosh. And I was overcome by love I've never experienced before. And I haven't had quite the same experience since. I've had little ones. But that event, I got out of my car because I was drunk with this love. I couldn't even walk straight. And I couldn't stop smiling. And I just loved everything and everyone around me. And it lasted for a good hour or so. And I promise I was not on anything except the love in my heart. And so this is possible for you too. If you haven't experienced that kind of deep love, ask for it. Make it a quest. Put it out there. You know others can. You can too. Absolutely. So I would encourage you to invest in your soul by actively looking to surrender in your life. Surrender and letting go. Let go, let God, let Source, let Spirit enter your life and take over and lead you in the most beautiful flow you've ever experienced before. So I hope this has been encouraging. Please like, subscribe, and share this video if it's been helpful for you. Have a beautiful day. See ya.